Those beautiful abs, a katana in each hand, and the big pot on his head. If you've played Elden Ring before, you probably know the man I just described. That is none other than Let Me Solo Her, better known as the Elden Ring Legend. But how exactly did Let Me Solo Her become such a prodigy, and where exactly is he at now? It's time to find out. But let's talk about one thing first. Bosses. The reason many people did finish Elden Ring and enjoy it, and also the reason a lot of people simply quit. Elden Ring, just like any other game of this genre, relies heavily on being extremely challenging to beat. And that's because of how tough the bosses actually are. And despite having a lot more flexibility in Elden Ring with weapons and how to approach a fight, the bosses are significantly more challenging than FromSoftware's previous creations. And for new players to master the timing of a boss and actually beat it, it's a very steep learning curve. And the main reason so many Souls game newbies quit after the first 30 minutes. Speaking of bosses though, some of the most challenging ones in Elden Ring include Mog, the Elden Beast, Malekith, but there's one boss in Elden Ring that everybody is afraid of. The boss that broke more controllers than you can probably count, and the boss that triggered the loudest screams of both rage and happiness. The one and only Melania, Blade of Miquella.
I am Melania, Blade of Miquella.
Also known as the hardest boss in Elden Ring, by a long mile. Being brand new to the game and fighting Melania for the first time, many players didn't even know she had a second phase. At least not until they got to the first phase, which for a new player can take several hours of pain and suffering. And seeing yet another full health bar after you thought it was over is one of the most discouraging things ever. That, combined with her super fast attacks and movement, makes Melania the toughest boss in Elden Ring. Needless to say, both the Souls game newbies and veterans were struggling big time with Melania. Although suddenly all of the rages and stress from the Souls community seemed to stop. Why, you may ask? Because there was someone who made the Melania experience much more pleasant for the Tarnished. Someone with an unfathomable amount of knowledge regarding Elden Ring, and someone who has fully mastered Melania and her attacks. A complete stranger to everyone, recognizable only by the big pot on his head and his very unique name, Let Me Solo Her. But who exactly is this odd and sexy man? Well, his real name is Klein Tsuboi, and his story didn't actually start with Elden Ring. It all began with him giving Dark Souls 3 a try, and he literally almost gave up on the first boss he encountered. If that would have happened, there wouldn't be a Let Me Solo Her right now. But thankfully he never gave up, and slowly fell in love with everything Dark Souls 3 had to offer. The movement, fighting mechanics, and of course the difficulty and how satisfying it felt to finally beat a tough boss. But there's one thing in particular Klein liked about Dark Souls 3, and that was the multiplayer and co-op aspect of the game. Helping players beat other players in PvP or helping people with bosses in PvE was his major reason for being so passionate about the game. And fast forward to E3 2019, when Elden Ring was first announced to the public, Klein, just like the rest of the Soulsborne fans, was extremely excited for the release of this game. When Elden Ring finally came out, Klein was one of the first people to jump on it, and when he reached the so-called hardest boss in Elden Ring, aka Melania, he decided to do something that was unheard of before. Since Klein fell in love with Melania, he fought her over and over again until he had fully mastered everything there is to know about her. Once he mastered Melania's attacks and movement, Klein thought it would be funny and wholesome to help other fellow Tarnished with this very hard boss. So after careful consideration, he came up with an interesting outfit idea, to say the least, which was no armor whatsoever and just a big pot on his head. And he started joining other people who requested help on Melania. The players summoning Let Me Solo Her didn't think much of it at first. Many honestly thought he was a complete noob based on his outfit choice. But after the first few seconds of summoning him, players were left speechless to see that they didn't actually have to fight Melania at all, because Klein was easily handling her on his own, without taking a single freaking hit. A few summons later, the word started to go around the Soulsborne community that apparently there was this weird naked guy who will beat Melania for you. But in March 2022, after a few weeks of people randomly summoning Klein, everything changed, because Let Me Solo Her was officially born. What exactly happened though? At the end of March, a Reddit user that goes by Sazed813 created what is now one of the most iconic Reddit posts in Elden Ring history. In the post, Sazed basically talked about his experience with summoning Let Me Solo Her, saying this: "So I popped the finger remedy and approached the first sign I could see. It was a man, wearing nothing but a jar on his head, holding two katanas, named Let Me Solo Her. I considered against it, but I was curious, and who am I to deny his wish?" As you can clearly see, Sazed's experience with summoning Klein was similar to everyone else's, using the finger remedy, approaching the sign, and seeing a half-naked man with a giant pot on his head. But because Sazed was the first person ever to post anything related to Let Me Solo Her, the Reddit post blew up everywhere because of two things. For one, it was unheard of for something like this to happen before, which naturally got people curious, and secondly, a ton of people could relate to this, since Klein Tsuboi, which at this point in his story is known as Let Me Solo Her, helped hundreds if not thousands of players beat Melania. But this is not all, because not only did this Reddit post explode everywhere on the internet with over 45,000 upvotes, it actually had a way deeper impact. You see, Sazed's Reddit post got so popular that it even reached the man himself, Let Me Solo Her. So in April 2022, a month after the Reddit post, Klein responded with a YouTube video titled Let Me Solo Her 3rd Summon Solo Malenia, which was Klein's first ever YouTube video. He then posted an actual Reddit post as well to respond to Sazed and the rest of the community, giving people a heads up by saying, "You might have crossed paths with a summon called Let Me Solo Her. I've been helping countless Tarnished in their quest to defeat Melania, by going butt naked except for a jar on my head." And Klein thought he'd promote his YouTube video at the end of that post too, since it was heavily related. And this is where things get crazy, because after posting that YouTube video and the Reddit post, Klein went to bed that night without thinking much of it. Little did he know that the next morning his life would change forever. The very next day, Klein was shocked to see that his video was sitting at hundreds of thousands of views, and his Reddit post had tens of thousands of upvotes. FYI, his video is now at over 3 million views, and the Reddit post is at almost 50,000 upvotes. So it's safe to say that starting that day, Let Me Solo Her was officially born on the internet, and he really did blow up overnight. After that, Let Me Solo Her felt responsible towards the community to keep playing Elden Ring and documenting everything on his YouTube channel, while helping fellow Tarnished beat Melania. And guess what? He did just that. Klein kept making YouTube videos and doing live streams out of his attempts to beat Melania for other players, and each video kept getting millions of views, with fans thanking him for his help towards the community and being mind-blown by his level of skill. Fast forward to 2024, after helping thousands of players with Melania and after countless videos and streams, Let Me Solo Her is now known as the Elden Ring Legend, with an honored place in the Souls community and a YouTube channel that's currently sitting at 600,000 subscribers and more than 50 million total views, which is absolutely insane to say the least. But the billion-dollar question is, how did Let Me Solo Her manage to keep his fame? In other words, what makes him so special? Simple, it's called SDI. Skill, determination, and inspiration. 3 things that Let Me Solo Her uses to his advantage. The first one is quite obvious, skill. To be able to beat one of, if not the hardest boss in Elden Ring, requires an unparalleled level of both mental and in-game skill. It's no shame to say that if every one of us tried to do what Klein did and basically fill in his shoes, we would fail terribly. Why? Because very few people have such an accurate reaction time as Let Me Solo Her. He's able to perfectly dodge every single one of Melania's attacks, and the scary part is, he makes it look like a piece of cake. Not to mention the fact that Klein managed not only to learn but master Melania's moves in a very short amount of time. Elden Ring came out at the end of February, and by April 13th, Let Me Solo Her already had helped over 1,000 players to beat Melania. Correct me if I'm wrong, but fully mastering a boss's movements and attack patterns in a month and a half isn't easy work. And bonus points for Klein because it wasn't just any boss, it was Melania, which makes the learning curve 10 times harder. But Let Me Solo Her did it, and he did it well. Although you don't only need skill to achieve what Let Me Solo Her achieved, you also need the D. Not that type of D, you dirty bastards, I was referring to determination. Having impressive skills is one thing, but what truly makes Let Me Solo Her so damn special is his determination. Even if he never mentioned this anywhere, Klein didn't give up once while learning Melania. And just imagine the pain and suffering he had to go through to be able to beat Melania over 6,000 times. You heard that right. It's estimated by GameRant that from 2022 till now, Let Me Solo Her fought Melania between 6,000 and 7,000 times. And keep in mind, that does not include the times he fought Melania and failed, which are definitely more times than he succeeded. Let Me Solo Her learn from failure, and with each death he got better. This alone, combined with the determination and patience Klein has, made him an Elden Ring legend, and that is truly inspirational. Speaking of inspiration, which is the last letter in SDI, this is the result of skill plus determination. Let me explain. What Let Me Solo Her has done and is still doing is something unheard of before in the Soulsborne community. Nobody has dedicated so much time, effort, and responsibility to master such a tough boss as Melania, and help others in the process. Klein's skills and determination not only have tremendously helped other players to beat Melania, but he also showed everyone that it's actually possible. People watched how smoothly and effortlessly Let Me Solo Her fought Melania, and they were inspired to jump back on Elden Ring and continue where they left off. Players wanted to be like him, do what he does, and even if a lot of players weren't nearly as skilled as Let Me Solo Her, his videos and streams still gave them the necessary motivation to keep fighting that tough boss and not give up. This is why Let Me Solo Her is so damn special and an absolute Elden Ring legend. He uses his skill and determination to inspire millions of players to keep fighting Melania, while helping as many of them as he possibly can by being summoned. When we think about Let Me Solo Her though, our mind goes to 2022, because that's when he blew up and had his most viral videos. But where is Klein now? With 2025 being upon us, is Let Me Solo Her still with us? Yes and no. After continuously helping others with Melania, Klein started to hang up his katanas, and many people thought that was the end of it. But they couldn't have been more wrong, because after the 21st of June 2024, when the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC came out, a brand new series of bosses also came out, and some of these bosses were way more challenging than the ones from the base game. With the release of the DLC, Let Me Solo Her made one of the most epic comebacks in Elden Ring history, because only 6 days after the DLC came out, Klein officially announced his comeback. But this time, something was different. Instead of Let Me Solo Her, his name is now Let Me Solo Him. You heard that right. The Elden Ring Legend came back with a brand new name and an addition to his outfit. He still rocks the big pot on his head and the katanas, but now he's got a cloak on his back. Just when you thought he couldn't get any more badass. The reason behind Klein's new name is because of one of, if not the hardest DLC bosses, Mesmer the Impaler. Klein posted a new video on the 27th of June called Let Me Solo Him, which was his official comeback. And in the video you can also see him absolutely demolish Mesmer without taking a single hit, just like he did with Melania. And people quickly caught on. The name Let Me Solo Him means he will solo Mesmer. In other words, Klein did the exact same thing as he did with Melania. People summoned him when they went against Mesmer, and every single time he made the boss fight look like a piece of cake. People even said, "The other day you helped me out. No matter how many times I tried, I always turned to dust in an instant. But you turned him into dust in an instant with a solo. It was an honor to see your amazing skills right before my eyes. I'll continue to support you." As you can see, Klein is now back in his full form, combining his skills skills and determination to help others with Mesmer just as he helped others with Melania, and again inspire millions of Tarnished. And people were very much inspired. Matter of fact, maybe a little too much inspired. Remember when I said earlier that everyone was trying to be like Let Me Solo Her, or even better said, Let Me Solo Him? Well, Klein is so popular now that players are literally impersonating him in-game. You heard that right. Certain people are legit dressing up just as him in Elden Ring and pretending to be him when other players ask for help at bosses. Although people quickly realize that many of the players who are trying to fill in Klein's shoes aren't really him, because he's the only one who can destroy bosses so smoothly, without taking any damage whatsoever. But Let Me Solo Her had a way bigger impact than you can imagine. Not only did his iconic outfit and skills affect the normal Elden Ring player base, but many of the big streamers like Kaisenet saw what he's doing and took inspiration from him. When Kaisenet announced his Elden Ring marathon in March 2024, he included Let Me Solo Her in the trailer. And when Kai reached Melania in the game, of course he had to fight her the way Klein did, half naked and with a big pot on his head. Truth be told, Let Me Solo Her managed to change the way players view tough bosses, and because of his simplicity mixed with the impressive skills he has, weirdly enough, many people relate to him and his story. That's why he's the Elden Ring legend and will remain in Elden Ring's history forever. So we know what Let Me Solo Her has been doing lately, but what is he doing like right now? Well, these last few days, Klein's been doing what he does best, streaming himself while he helps out fellow Tarnished, and when he gets bored of that, he does different Elden Ring challenges and randomizers while his fans are watching a master at work. Speaking of his fans though, Let Me Solo Her has some of the most unique fan bases out there, and for good reason. If you weren't aware yet, the main way people thank Let Me Solo Her and show appreciation towards what he's done is fan art. And I'm not talking about simple fan art. There's people out there who've literally made masterpieces of art with Let Me Solo Her. 3D models with him, and probably the biggest flex of them all, fromsoftware themselves have sent Klein a special edition package with a massive katana from Elden Ring and more cool stuff, as a thank you for being so influential towards the game. With that being said, we now know everything about Let Me Solo Her. His origin, how he got famous, why is he so special, and what is he up to now. And since we're at the end of the video, I'd love to hear your guys' experience with Let Me Solo Her. Did he ever help you beat Melania or Mesmer? And if yes, how was it? Let me know in the comments down below. And since we just spoke of Kaisenet, if you want to hear more about his Elden Ring marathon, click here. Also, one last thing before I go, the information regarding Let Me Solo Her's origin and past I took from Evanth's 1997's channel. You can go check his video out. His video is called Let Me Solo Her Gamer of the Year Explained, where he actually interviewed the man himself, Let Me Solo Her, and that's where I took some of the info, so please make sure you go that video out and subscribe to him. And lastly, if you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. Besides that, I hope you have a good rest of your day and see you in the next one. Peace!